Hello. So, I guess the Snoopy Show exists, and I've just heard about it and watched the trailer right now, so I'm going to talk about it. For one thing, I'm a decently big fan of the original Peanuts animated shorts, I guess we could call them. They were mostly holiday specials, and then a few, like, one-off episode kind of things here and there, and then it was a show and then another show, and ever since like the 80s, Peanuts has been kind of intermittently rebooted, I guess. You know, you got a new voice cast and slightly different stories being told. Some of them got very, very dark. I think it was the first feature-length Peanuts movie that really hit on some dark subject matter for sure, and people have talked about that before. But this is a new thing called the Snoopy Show, and it's coming out in a couple weeks at the time of recording. It's coming out February 5th, I guess, through Apple TV+. But it's a recognizable IP, and that's all it takes to get something greenlit these days. Unfortunately, when I went to look for any kind of additional information about the show, I found next to nothing. First of all, there was some other either movie or episode of an old Peanuts property called The Snoopy Show or something along those lines. So those are most of the results, and even now the clickbait sites just have the trailer up. They just re-upload the trailer. Like, why does IGN do that so much? Why? Like, it's not a game. I don't understand. The trailer itself, it looks pretty good. It looks fine. I was a little disappointed by the trailer editing tropes. It reminded me a lot of like early 2010s DreamWorks movies where they just put, oh, here's recognizable characters that the older people in the audience will know, and they put like really what seems to be always immediately dated pop music behind the trailer to make it seem hip and fresh and contemporary. So I didn't like that they kind of did that with the trailer for the Snoopy Show. It was a little off-putting, although I kind of doubt they're gonna have that kind of music in the show, and it also didn't seem like the tone of the show was going for anything too like contemporary or slightly edgy like you get with that Smurfs reboot or the Trolls movies or anything like that. I also think it's a smart enough move to center the show around Snoopy because he's kind of 1 million times more marketable than Charlie Brown himself, especially today. And Snoopy's likable. Like, I don't know, are you really, is there a group of people out there who have something against Snoopy? He's a little annoying, I guess, in some of the old specials, but he's fine. Look at that fun design. What a fun, simple design that works so well in animation. The trailer didn't give us much in terms of what the show's actually going to be or what kinds of stories they're going to try to tell. It looked pretty simple. It looked pretty basic, you know, probably aimed at a very young audience, which makes perfect sense. Outside of that, I didn't get much. It mostly just seemed to nod to a lot of the Charlie Brown tropes and the stuff that we remember from the old Peanuts whatever. And going back to what I was saying earlier about trying to research the show, I found really very, very little. Even on IMDb, I found they had like one director listed, but they were listed as only directing one episode of this new series, and it's a guy I wasn't familiar with who's worked in television animation for a good while. It had the voice cast listed, but they're children. They're small children. I don't know. I'm not familiar with any of their work. And outside of that, yeah, I didn't see a list of producers. I didn't see like I guess it wouldn't be a creator for a show coming from an established IP, but I didn't see any big names attached to it. It really does just seem like we have the rights to this property. We're going to make something with it. With that said, I guess the only other thing I can offer here is like vague hopes for what the show might be in terms of tone and content. For one, I think it would be cool if it had, I'm fine with it staying lighthearted, but here's the other thing. The Peanuts, all going way back to the cartoon strips and in newspapers and such, which I read quite a bit as a child. One of the big themes, or one of the big, I don't know what to call it, one of the hallmarks of the Peanuts brand has always been like, wow, at least some of these kids are very serious, you know, and they talk like grown-ups, and they even if they're not talking about anything especially weighty or high stakes, they take things very seriously and they kind of act like grown-ups would in those situations. And I really like that. I mean, Charlie Brown himself, I find very likable for how just like dour and dark and bummed out he is most of the time. As I've talked about previously here on the channel in several other videos, ever since like the late 90s, animation has really dipped into a very successful brand of animated content that appeals to both kids and adults at once. We can point to a ton of the Pixar stuff. I talked about Summer Camp Island for quite a while. Adventure Time, Steven Universe, and another show that I just watched that I'll be talking about in an upcoming video that's now one of my favorites. After watching the first episode like 2 days ago, now I'm hooked. There are a lot of parallels out there for something like this to bridge that gap. From the trailer, I didn't see a lot of that. I didn't see a lot of hinting at either serious subject matter or the characters acting kind of serious. Wizened, is that a word? Wiser than you would expect a child to be, attuned to the world that they live in. But I think that would work really well. That said, if it's focusing on Snoopy, will there be room for that? If we're mostly following Snoopy on his wacky adventures and the Red Baron, is that the name of his World War I persona? I'm sorry, I wish there was a lot more to say about this. There's very little out there right now. There will be a decent flood of new stuff coming in now that the trailer has been released, but the show comes out so soon that we may as well just wait around and watch it. Waiting around is not something that the internet is especially good at, but hey, I guess that's just kind of what we have to do. I would very happily watch like the first 3 or 4 episodes at least, just to get a sense for what kind of show it is and whether or not it appeals to me and what I tend to enjoy in animation these days. But outside of that, I'm just going to open up the floor and say, tell me things about what you think about the show. Tell me if you care about Peanuts at all. If you haven't heard of Peanuts, if you've never heard of Snoopy, maybe you're a younger person and you don't know what these things are, who these characters are, and whether or not you're excited at all for this, or if it just seems like some random, weird, offhanded reboot that will just kind of fade into obscurity after one season. I guess that's all. Bye.